We were recently invited by Jason of Quality Surfboards Hawaii, located at 1650 Moana Boulevard, Suite 104, to a meet and greet featuring world champion shaper John Pyzel of Pyzel Surfboards. John shapes award-winning boards for JohnJohnFlorence, just to name a few. In this episode, he talks about the origin of the white tiger.
John, take it off in the black jersey. John, in the goal.
Yeah!
Yeah, we're just going to talk through a few of John's kind of newer models that make sense for the South Shore as we're coming into summer here. You know, obviously he's very well known for a lot of the Ghost and the Paddle-Axe big wave boards and stuff. But he does make a lot of really good small wave fun shapes. And so
Town focused,
exactly. And so yeah, we're just gonna get started. We'll kind of, we can shift forward a little bit.
We got like, hi guys. Anyways, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks for coming. Appreciate it, and thanks for having us, you guys.
Yeah.
But we just brought some boards. We have a couple boards one board that we don't really normally make yet, and then a couple new boards, and just a few little more like small wave stuff. That if we just kind of talk through it, whatever, and then if you guys have questions for me, that's great, because I can try to answer them. This is the board. It's funny, Joel the other day, I made one of these for Joel a little while ago, and he called me up. He's like, this thing's like the cheat code. Like, this board works so good in small waves, which is really good to hear. But this board is super fun. It's called the White Tiger, and we've been making it for about the last year. We released it about a year ago, and this thing was just like a little weird project I made for John. I made him 4 boards. It was actually like when I first made it, it was during COVID, and it was like we were trying to think of like fun things to do because no one could go on a trip. It was just a mess, and I'm like, I'll make 4 weird boards, and like you can film yourself riding them, whatever. We'll make a little project out of it, and he never did it. But this board there was 4 boards, and they all sat in his garage for like a year or maybe more. I don't even know how long. And then all of a sudden one day I see a picture of him on this one, and I'm like, wait, what's up? You rode that board? Right? Oh, this thing's sick. He was just super psyched on it. And he just started riding it a bunch. And the one I made him was only 5'6", and he's 6'2", so he's a pretty big guy. So it's a tiny board. But this thing was super cool for him, and it was like he usually normally rides like super refined, high performance. That's it. Like he's not really messing around too much. And then that was just kind of all these time. The timing was good for like playing around. And then he started riding a bunch, and then he got so psyched on it. He's like, hey, how do we make this into like a regular shortboard so I can ride it in contests? And that's how we ended up with the other version, which is the Red Tiger, which is like a stretched out, more shortboardy. It's still kind of wider nose than a lot of shortboards and a little different, but something that he felt like he could ride in contests. He's like, I can't ride this in a contest. Like, you just don't get scores. You know how that, right? You're like, you can't ride fish or whatever. This thing's basically like a fish with a squash tail. I mean, if you really imagine this having a swallowtail, you realize like, oh, this is a little fishy board. But anyways, it's super fun, super basic. It's got a lot of V through here. It's got like a double concave, so the bottom, which is one of my favorite traits in boards actually, is it lets the board really roll rail to rail really easily. Even though when you get a wider board, they tend to get like sticky sometimes from rail to rail, especially if there's a lot of regular like single concave. And so putting a double concave kind of breaks that up. And then having this V run through here, it's really flat rocker, but then when you have a little bit of V back here, it gives you a little more rocker in the rail. And so it lets it tip on like through a turn, lets it kind of tip onto the rail easier. Kind of releases some pressure when you're going fast. And it's just super fun.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about this model, because I do think it is like a cheat code, and so like don't be fooled by like the outline, because it is kind of like John said, like a fish style. But the thing like actually surfs like a high performance shortboard. Like it goes super fast. I mean, I grew up surfing waves like Barber's Point and Hawbush and stuff, that where it's like you really need something like this to like help get through the flat spots, and this thing goes right through the flat spots. But it also like holds the rail very nicely, and so this thing just, yeah, it's
even though it's so wide, but if you ride it short enough, it still is going to go like up and down, right? It's not like if it was super long and it would kind of fog, but if you ride it short enough for yourself, whatever you're comfortable with, it gets it pretty nice and fun. It fits into little tight spots and stuff.
Totally. Would you recommend any certain fin or fin size for this one?
Everybody likes different stuff, so it's hard to say. Generally, one of the rules I would say with this board, because it's so short, is I recommend, most people are happy with a bigger fin. So like if you ride a medium fin in your day-to-day board or whatever, if you put like I remember when John first started riding these, like he was like, I'm riding a medium or medium large, and then I'm like, try to put a large, and you put a large in there, and then he said it got a lot more drive, but it still felt nice and loose. It didn't tighten it up too much because it's so big or so small. But the bigger fins do give it a lot of drive, and just a lot more, like you can push off of it a little harder. But and then either way, like you've only ridden as a thruster, right?
I've only ridden as a thruster.
So obviously, I was just asking these guys about how they like their options set up for boards. And for small waves, it feels like the thruster. If it's like more up and down surfing you want to try to do, the thruster works really well. If you're just trying to kind of keep speed and like flowing more, the quad works really good too. And it's like a little faster feeling with the quad, but it's just a different kind of feel to it, I think. But it's kind of nice to have the options with these. Pretty fun.
Can you ride it as a twin as well, or not really?
You can, absolutely. But the one thing that like people do, you can go for it, for sure. But the thing is with these fins, like if I was going to make it a dedicated twin fin, it would be further back, right? So these fins are a little bit far forward. But with a lot of the fin systems, I don't know exactly how FCSs are. Do they, when you have FCS, is the tab further back? Some of the bigger fins?
Just a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be actually, so it's actually like you move your fin back a little bit, just the way the fins sit. Future fins has, depending on the twin fins, every one of them is like a weirdly different position. So like some of them are a half inch behind this, some of them are all the way up to like an inch and 3/8 behind this. So it kind of works that way. And if you have I think if you put a keel fin in this, it would work good. If you try to put like a regular like Mark Richards upright twin fin, I don't think you would get much out of it.
Okay.
But you could do that with a little trailer, you know. But if a dedicated twin, I think you need a keel fin to really make that work.
Nice.
But it'll work. It's just not ideal. Like if I was
Gotcha.
making it custom and you really wanted that, I'd move it back.
Gotcha.
Do you have any other questions on the White Tiger?
These tie dyes. This girl that works for us does these tie dyes. She has like tie dye shirt company that she does, and she just does these on fiberglass for us. Every one of them is totally unique. It's pretty sick. She started doing them. She's like, "Can I try that on a couple boards?"
John,
They turned out
just
so
want to
cool.
chime in. The little accommodation is for the glass only.
Right.
Your shaper dot.
Yeah, you're gonna sit right on there.
Yeah, it'll mark up for either futures or FCS.
Right,
That accommodation is just for the glass.
Right. I got you.
Should we get into the Wildcat?
Well, let's go to this board.
Okay, let's go to this.
So this is kind of in the similar. I would say it's kind of in that realm, but a little different feel. This board is something that's kind of strange because it's got a step deck. It's actually got a concave deck and a step rail. So it's a little different, and it's weird. It's kind of hard to really get it until you actually like have one and feel it and like, oh, this looks fun or something. I don't know. It's weird. But this board, the Precious, came from another board that we make, which is called the Gremlin. And the Gremlin it's got the same rockers, the Gremlin, and the same outline, but when we make this stock, it's narrower than the Gremlin. The Gremlin was like more of a stubbier, wider board, and the Gremlin has a really beefy, girthy rail. Like it's really chunky. And so one of the things that I wanted to do with this board was I like a lot of people like the Gremlin, but their one complaint sometimes is that there's like too much beef up the nose and through the rail. And so we just kind of took that and I just designed this thing where you just bring this up so this turns into a concave and then drop these down. So you really you got the Gremlin, but then it's got this nice refined rail, but you still have all this volume in the board. The trick was trying to keep the foam there, but have it feel like there's not a lot of foam in it when you surf it. And that's kind of how this board is supposed to operate. It's not made for, I would say the the White Tiger for sure has a better low end than this board. You've ridden both these recently too.
Yeah.
But this board is good in like kind of, I would say like average waves, and then into like decent waves too. It's not really like a groveler, but it's pretty fun. It's just like a whole different little take on things, and I don't know, I just thought it was fun to do. The first one I did actually was for John's filmer. His name's Eric Knudsen, and he was traveling with John all the time, and John won't let him bring boards with him, basically, because they have so much stuff. Like, they have so many bags with cameras and boards and everything. And so he can, like, usually he's like, I can bring one board. And we started kind of brainstorming on how we could get him something. And what he wanted was a board he could foil board and surf. And so that's how I came up with this, because I wanted him to have a thin rail to surf, but I wanted him to have volume for his little foil paddling. And so the first one I made was I think it was a 5/8, and it had a thruster set up here, and it had 2 fin box, like foil boxes here. It's pretty heavy in the tail. But Eric took it on tour, and he loved the thing. So that was, and he came up with the name The Precious, because he said it was from the Lord of the Rings, where it's one board and rule them all. He's a real nerd. But he's a good guy.
So this is my board here. So it's a 5/6. I think it's 19 and then 2 1/4. And so it's about 27.5 liters. And so far I've rode it 3 times now, and it worked really good at like Lonnie's a week or 2 ago. Lonnie's was really good. It was a bit overhead, and this board, like, you know, got in the waves really nicely. It actually held the rail very nicely, real quick, you know. And then like Pyzel said, it doesn't really grovel too well, but like I rode it in waves like this big, and it went pretty nicely at like small Hawai'i laps.
It wouldn't be your first choice for that.
Wouldn't be my first choice.
If you're on a trip or something, like, you could make do.
Exactly.